Welcome back to NewsX World. I'm Megha Sharma and you're watching Focal Length, where we get you a briefing on topics from across the world. A series of recent adverse court rulings have provided major impediments to some of U.S. President Donald Trump's policies and executive actions, underscoring the federal judiciary's increasingly lonely role in serving as a pause on president's efforts to dramatically reshape the country. The courts have long been a key battleground for Trump's foes, and a flurry of litigation earlier this year jammed up some of his second-term agenda as judges scrutinized cases that were brought over everything from his dismantling of federal agencies to his targeting of elite law firms. The president has scored some victories in those lawsuits, thanks in part to the favorable rulings from the conservative majority Supreme Court. But many of them are still working their way through the justice system and are likely to not see a final resolution for some time at least. Still, there are several high-profile rulings over the past few weeks that have served as a check on Trump's actions at a time when the Republican-controlled Congress has largely stepped aside so that the president can govern as he sees fit. Now, from invoking the Alien Enemies Act to speed up deportation, to using emergency powers to impose import tariffs, from using federal troops in Los Angeles and Washington, D.C. to attempting to end birthright citizenship, and more recently firing the Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. All these actions have brought Trump's second presidential term under immense scrutiny. To discuss all this and more, joining me on the broadcast today is former White House attorney Cobb. Cobb was the assistant U.S. attorney for the District of Maryland from 1981 to 1986, and from July 2017 until May 2018, he was a member of the Trump administration on legal team. He has been a partner at Hogan Lovells in Washington, D.C. Thank you, Mr. Cobb, for joining me. And I do want to start off with the tariff war that has shaken the entire world. A U.S. Court of Appeals in its latest judgment has found that the 1977 International Economic Powers Act does not let Trump usurp congressional power to set tariffs and called it illegal. The Trump administration has moved the Supreme Court, calling the ruling quote-unquote illegal and seeking its reversal. Now, does Donald Trump have any basis for fighting this case?
He has a slight basis. I don't think he will be successful. The act in question does not reference tariffs. Congress has the primary authority for tariffs under our Constitution, can delegate that authority by statute to the president, has done so specifically in connection with certain other statutes, but not this statute. This statute is silent as to tariffs. It does permit the president, however, to terminate trade in a true emergency with another country. But the mere fact that he can terminate tariffs doesn't necessarily allow him to modulate them. And that's basically, I think, what the court ruled. There is an argument that has been made, and he's made again, that the mere fact that he can terminate must include the lesser sanction of modulating, but typically under our rule of law, Congress has to be more specific if it is actually going to authorize the president to impose tariffs. So I think that this court ruling is correct, and I think the Supreme Court will affirm it.
All right. Talking about the sweeping tariffs imposed by Donald Trump, they have ended up violating provisions of the World Trade Organization. What powers does the WTO have in overturning these executive orders? What recourse can aggrieved nations take against the Trump administration?
So the aggrieved nations can file claims and disputes with the WTO. The WTO can address those, but the WTO doesn't have an independent way of enforcing those agreements. It really relies on the goodwill and fealty of the signatories, including the United States. And there is no goodwill from the Trump administration with regard to the WTO. 2 days ago, Trump cut $29 million in funding for the WTO. it's pretty clear that he will deal with them contemptuously and not honor anything that they might do.
All right, moving on to, the Trump administration versus the Harvard case, legal entanglements. The U.S. federal judge has given Harvard University a landmark victory yesterday in its fight against the Trump administration on what it accuses the university of practicing anti-Semitism in the school campus. How do you view this judgment?
So it's interesting that we've had 3 recent judgments where federal courts, in this case a district court judge, and in 2 other cases courts of appeals, have found that the government has acted pretextually, meaning that they have contrived a reason to take the action that they sought to take. I think this ruling by the judge in Boston is a predictable one. Clearly, Trump is doing this consistent with his, acts of vengeance and retribution, and I believe that the judge got this right. Unfortunately, it doesn't really save Harvard because Trump will continue to act vengefully and consistently, and will have to be stopped again and again by the courts. But it's a good step, I believe, for the rule of law. I think, sadly, the courts are just catching up. The way that our Constitution is structured, courts are sort of a lagging indicator in the sense that they don't get to act immediately upon what the president does. The cases have to be developed. It takes months. But finally, I think they're engaging in a way that reveals, how whimsical and embarrassing much of what Trump has done has been.
Again, parallelly, if we discuss about the case against Columbia, in a similar case, Columbia University has, in fact, gone the other way. It has agreed to pay a $200 million settlement with the Trump administration. Now, is the Trump administration justified in freezing these assets to the Ivy Leagues, particularly accusing them of practicing or tolerating anti-Semitism in their campus?
No, and as the case yesterday made plain, that the anti-Semitism pretext was contrived by Trump. Columbia, I think, concluded that they would rather settle than fight. I think Harvard took a more principled position, contesting the autocratic, vengeful nature of Trump's conduct, and were vindicated yesterday. That doesn't mean that Harvard may not settle at some point in the future to buy peace, but at the same time, I think most universities, and certainly most Americans, are glad that Harvard fought this out. His attacks on universities are much like his attacks on law firms. Wholly unprecedented, wholly unjustifiable. In simple terms, it's pure extortion. I think the law firms that fought and won, and every law firm who fought did win, are viewed much more favorably in the legal community than those who settled and promised fealty to Trump.
Moving on to the other fiasco that made headlines, Donald Trump ended up removing the Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook from a position, and her ouster has been viewed as an attack on the central bank's independence. Again, your views on this? She has obviously decided to fight it out in the legal battle in the courts.
Yeah, so under our law, the president does have the right to hire and fire most people in the executive branch. However, certain entities do have a for-cause requirement, and the Fed is considered, among those entities as one of the most independent. The Supreme Court has previously indicated that the Fed is a different type of entity than others when it comes to the president's power to hire and fire. He can only do so for cause. For cause is not really defined in the Federal Reserve statute, so litigation is warranted. But typically, cause is inefficient neglect in office, or malfeasance in office. The mortgage issues that have been raised, although not substantiated, by Trump, did not occur during her time in office, were many years before. And I think she has a very strong case. Certainly the complaint that she filed in federal court in D.C. Was a very powerful one, and I think she will likely prevail and be able to continue in her role.
What do you think has driven Donald Trump administration to fire Lisa Cook? What at the crux, what the crux of this entire controversy that has arisen? There are talks that obviously because she was hired during the time of the Biden administration, and that's perhaps the primary reason for this decision that has been made by the Trump administration.
So I don't think it's the fact that she's a Biden appointee as much as it is a fact that she's a strong supporter of prudent economic policy and maintaining the interest rates at a level that is necessary to assist the economy. She's a supporter of the chairman. Trump dislikes the chairman. She has voted repeatedly to maintain interest rates where they are rather than cut them. So in essence, she has defied the president. The president has made it very clear that he's going to seek vengeance and retribution as to anybody who defies him. He removed Bolton's, our former National Security Advisor John Bolton's security detail, even though he's under death threats from Iran. He searched Bolton's house. He's taken action against others, including Kamala Harris, James Comey, and others. So I think she went on Trump's enemies list, and she suffers there because he's an autocratic dictator at this stage of the game, and it's taking the courts time to restrain him. But they seem to be actively involved now and are routinely determining that his acts are unlawful and exceed his authority.
Right. Again, another aspect of the executive orders that Trump has issued. This was with regards to the upheaval over Trump deploying the National Guards, first in Los Angeles to quell the protests, and later on in Washington, D.C., to what he said has been an increase in the number of crime that takes place in the national capital. Now, why do you think is there such strong opposition to it? And is Trump within his rights to deploy the troops in all these regions?
No, he's clearly not. And in Los Angeles, Judge Breyer of California recently ruled that Trump had exceeded his authority, violated the Posse Comitatus Act, in essence, conducting an armed occupation of a state. D.C. is a little bit different because D.C. is under the Constitution controlled by Congress and the executive branch, so he has greater rights there to take the action he's taken. But he's currently, attempting to find a way to take this type of action in other so-called blue states or democratically controlled states, most specifically in Chicago and Illinois. Illinois is resisting aggressively. He doesn't really have a legal basis to do it, and the California decision, I think, will be very helpful to Illinois if they suit Bennett. But it's very troubling to Americans to have a president who wants to conduct armed invasions of states where he's not popular.
Mm-hmm. Again, in the past few months, Trump administration also invoked the Alien Enemies Act to speed up deportations. His executive order has attracted legal challenges as well. How do you view this?
2 days ago, that a federal court ruled that Trump had pretextually invoked the Alien Enemies Act and was aggressive. The court aggressively rejected the representations of the government government. The findings in that case and in the tariff case and the IEPA case all are significant in American law because really for the first time in history, the courts have abandoned the presumption of normalcy that normally was afforded to representations by the government, and in each instance has found that the Trump administration was basically lying and ruled on the facts as opposed to what the government tried to pretend was real.
Right. According to you, you have served in the Trump government in the first term. Do you find the Trump administration, Trump 2.0, to be more aggressive, whether it is about his foreign policy that gets entangled with the trade directives and orders that he has issued all across the globe, or we talk about the birthright citizenship with deportation, talking about, sacking appointees. How do you compare Trump 1.0 to Trump 2.0?
Vastly different. I think Trump 1.0 was a dictator in training. Trump 2.0 is a dictator, at full force. His regard for the rule of law is non-existent. He doesn't have any strong advisors of character. There's nobody in the White House, nobody in the administration is telling him what he can't do or shouldn't do to be consistent with governing norms in the history of America. He's been allowed to act in a character-free way, and it's taken the courts to try to stop him because Congress has been neutered by Republican cowardice, and they're not participating in the way that I think the people that founded the Constitution believed that they would have and should have.
Mm-hmm. All right. On that note, we come to the end of this show, and thank you, Cobb, for speaking to us.
My pleasure. Nice to be with you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, with that, it's a wrap on this episode of Focal Length. And for more international news and updates, stay tuned on NewsX World.